who are very expert in etrog industry, they know this as well. Like if you get it this color and you want it to become yellowish, goldish, you put it next to this peels of apples or bananas, because they release that enzyme, and the enzyme basically is mepashel. It ripens it quickly. So there's a whole chokhmah of how the industry works by the time it gets to the consumer. And some of the very high-end avocados, they will never make it to the market because they're by nature very soft. So if you transport it, it will all be ruined completely by the time it gets to the consumer market. Again, these are things that depend on the type. So when you buy avocados, sometimes say, okay, you touch it, it's another 5 days, or bananas, the same thing. So if it's in a state that nobody would touch it because it's hard as a rock, so then, of course, that would be borer. That's pashut. So even though that you have the safek primigadim, says the Mishnah Berurah, well, let's see what's pashut. If majority of people would not touch this, that already is a different type. And even if they're edible, but they're edible by force, still yesh baze isur midrabanan. At least would be a drabanan over here. And Aleph will become the same halacha as the leaves of the salad leaves that we discussed by romaine lettuce and so on. That will become a problem if you want to take off one type from the other. Okay. So this is the shita of Trumat Hadeshen so far. Trumat Hadeshen holds within one type, there is no isur of berera. You want the big ones, the small ones. If it's one type, pretty much it's considered fine.
Green apples, red apples are considered one type of apple?
So we'll get to that. Just give me a moment. I want to read to you the language of the Trumat Hadeshen very quickly as time allows. Okay, I'll just skip through it. Only in two different types. In one type of produce, small, big, you want to choose this one because its color is better. Doesn't make a difference. Unless you get to a criteria that is a differentiating criteria based on a significant portion of the society. It's burnt. It's not ripened. Then we're talking. But if I have a preference between different things, it's one type, it's not a problem. The Taz disagrees with this. The Taz says, even when you are doing your own preference, it's a problem. The Mishnah Berurah brings the Taz, right? He doesn't necessarily paskin like it, but it's important, especially noticing that the Chesed Alafim, the Ben Ish Chai, the Mamar Mordechai, many of the Sephardic Gedolim, they paskin like this Taz. So it's a legitimate shita for someone that wants to really be a Hasid and be careful. It's a legit shita to keep in mind. So it says the Mishnah Berurah, Vehine Hataz מחמיר אפילו במין אחד, שלא יברור אלא אותו שרוצה לאכול עתה. You only choose what you want to eat right now. Don't choose anything that you don't want to eat right now. Borer is hard enough of a sugya. You don't want to mess up anything, so you choose what you want. אבל הרבה אחרונים חלקו עליו. But many people, תוספת Shabbat disagrees with this. The Bet Meir, the Chemed Moshe, again, list goes on and on. The Rabbi Yehuda Ayash, actually, from the Sfardim, Rav in Algeria, tremendous Gaon Begadol, in time of Maran Chidam, he writes in Matei Yehuda, he says, the Taz is a massive Chiddush. It has no legs to stand on. He created this. There's no Shida of the Rishonim that supports this, and therefore he says you don't have to be machmir like this, right? But again, the Ben Ish Chai is machmir. The Chesed Alafim, Rabbi Eliezer Papa, the Pelei Yoetz, he is machmir. There are many Gidolei Sfaradim, the Mamar Mordechai. and so on. They're machmir, but again, Chacham Obadia is mekel over here. So you have the machloket. The halakha, the ikar din is like the Mishnah Berurah, like the majority of the poskim, that in one type there is no isur, but at the same time, if there's no real need for it, there is a legitimate shita brought in the Achronim to be more mindful, more careful in this item. Okay. Now, the Mishnah Berurah, let's go a little bit further in the Mishnah Berurah. I want to finish this part at least. And the Mishnah Berurah says, how about different recipes for the same meat? I took the same meat, same cut, and I made 5 different dishes from it. I cooked one part of it, I roasted the other part. I did what's the in thing right now that they put it in the water for 2-3 days? No, you said it? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Plastic bag.
Yeah, plastic bag. What's it called? Yeah, sous vide. It's written differently. It's like a thing. It's sous vide. Sous vide. Well, however you say it. It's 2 different ways to say it even. So I sous vide one of them. I roasted the other one. I cooked the other one. Same meat. Mamash, the same cut. Says the Mishnah Berurah. V'da. The basar sadiu mebushal mikli shnei minim. It's 2 different types of meat. Even though that's the same meat that you roasted and cooked, it's 2 different dishes, 2 different recipes. It's considered 2 different minim. Of course, if you have some chicken and some, you have, different birds. Let's call it. I wanted to say. There are birds that are questionable that the Ashkenazim don't eat, for instance, turkey. Many of them, not every Ashkenazi, because the Mesorah, not Mesorah, yes, no. But so imagine you have different cuts of meat of different birds. It's all off, but it's different types. Therefore, it will be a problem. Now, there's even a machloket, if you could believe that, by chicken breast and chicken thigh. If it's going to be the different consistency of oil, I think it's 3 times more in the chicken thigh than it is in chicken breast, right? So it tastes different, the texture is different. There are those who say, what are you talking about? It's chicken. It's the same chicken. So it's mutar, right? To make you happy. But there are those who say, no, it's the difference between a chicken thigh and a chicken breast is more than a chicken breast and turkey, right?
You can make that argument almost about everything. The crunchy outside of the apple is better than sometimes the mushy part of the inside of the apple. It's still the same apple. Some people like it with the peel, and they like the crunchy with the. But still, almost every fruit has different aspects of it that are.
No, chicken breast and chicken thigh is different, dude. One is oily.
Yeah, you see, I leave it up to you guys to fight it off. People feel differently about it. Okay, that was drastic.
What's considered choosing?
Right. Now, saying even Chacham Obadia in Chazon Obadia Chelik Dalet brings this machloket. He says, for instance, like you have different pieces of the same chicken, right? Let's say kurkevan. What do they call it in English? You have the inner parts that some people eat, some people don't eat. Like you have like liver, right? Chicken liver. Are you going to say that's chicken, same chicken? No, it tastes completely different. So even those recognize that at some point you have to draw a line. It's not that the same chicken is the same chicken. So once you say that, it's more understandable that when you have a different texture, different taste, there will be people who you can't pay them enough to have the chicken breast because you just don't like it. It's like rock for them. It doesn't have enough oil and it's not tasty, so they're not going to have it unless you pour a lot of sauce and ketchup and so on. Then it's mechaper on the thing. Okay, so but he says l'maaseh, and again leave the gray areas for discussion, but different types of meat are different recipes are different. Therefore, says the Chafetz Chaim, you have to be careful in the larger sudas not to sort out different types of meat that are offered over there. Okay, So that's as far as that's concerned. Now, there is a large machloket whether or not the Isur of Borer is, and I'm trying to again keep this as simplified as possible. There are many categories of machloket rishonim, as davar mechubar, davar gidule karka, and so on and so forth. For instance, there are those who hold that there is no Isur Borer really by things that don't grow from the ground, because all we have in Shas that are mentioned are all gidule karka, right? So the Trumat Hadeshin that we just learned that talks about fish, for instance, fish is not gidule karka. Well, there are those who say fish is gidule karka, but according to the Tosafot and Rashi, we leave this for later. If it's not gidule karka, so you see, you have borer by the items that are not gidule karka either, also, right? But Chacham Ovadia says in Yevi Omer that at the very least, this is sfeka dedina, and that's how he deals with it across the board in all of his writings. He says things that are not gidule karka, at the very least, would be sfeka dedina. It will be a safek. So you could combine it with other doubts to be mekel when push comes to shove, but we will be machmir on it by itself, right?
So,
Now that
does that mean
before we end, the or Letzion, if you want to see the leniencies, or Letzion, Chacham Ben Abba Shaul holds that anything that's not gidul karka is darabanan. So you just knocked out the scary isur of borer from a deoraita level to the rabbanan, so long as it's not gidul karka, right? So that would be some important information in the structure of Hilchot Borer before we even get to the next piece of Mishnah Berurah, right? Now, let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, this is towards the end of the page now, about like 10 lines, 8 lines up. Katvu acharonim, the poskim write, dehu adin bechol davar shem shnei minim. Any two types that you have, even if it's not food, kegon kelim ubegadim, like vessels, and begadim, clothing, all they're subject to isura borer. Varken sarich livror ze hamin sherotze litol achshav v'ashar yisharu al mekomam. So therefore, you always have to take the pair of socks that you want, or the vessel, the kli that you want, or the coat that you want from the mixture, and not, or the sefer that you want from the mixture, and not mix them up and do borer in that way. V'efshar, and then he says, possible, the intluim kama begadim ala kotel, that if you have begadim that are hanging on the rack, then, says the Mishnah Berurah, maybe, if you know that the one that you're looking for is there, so you want to just get to it by taking the other ones out and taking the one that you need, maybe that's mutar. Maybe that's already not considered borer. Okay. Now, as we mentioned, the Ben Ish Chai or Letzion, they both write that in Gemara we don't find borer by things that are not gidule karka. So therefore, in kelim and begadim, all of these things that the Mishnah Berurah discusses over here, it's isur darabanan only, right? Which makes it much easier, because now if you have a safek, it will be safek darabanan lekula. The scary elements that we mentioned all along of borer, according to them, it will be much less scary. Going to Chacham Ovadia, still you're dealing with a potential deoraita. He blibes this as safeka de dina. He leaves it as a safek in din, not that it's clear. Now, to be more mekel, the same Matei Yehuda that we mentioned, Rabbi Yehuda Ayash, he says it's pashut to him that when you have kelim, there's no isura borer altogether. Even each one of them stands by itself, there's no isura borer. The Aruch HaShulchan, the Ashkenazi side of things, also writes this. Rabbi Yechiel Michael Epstein in Aruch HaShulchan, he writes that by kelim there's no isura borer. So what's the difference? For instance, the difference is if you have, he does mention that it has to be clearly different than one another. For instance, if you have utensils, right? You have utensils that you washed, the utensils now you want to put them, sort them out in your drawer, in the divider that you have, right? So you want to put the spoons in the spoon thing, the forks in the fork, and the knives in the knife. Can you separate them? Well, if you're leaving it for the next Suda and it's considered a mixture, then for sure you cannot do that. A pashut, right? But if you say that there's no borer whatsoever, like the Batei Yehuda seems to say, like the Aruch HaShulchan seems to say, then it will be mutar. Basically, it will be mutar. Now, others don't necessarily agree with this. Chacham Obadia does not agree with this. In Chazon Obadia, in Yebi Omer, and Rabbi Moshe Feinstein doesn't agree with this in the Ashkenazi side of things. That you find, they learn in the Trumat HaDeshen that we mentioned, the whole Seif is based on the Trumat HaDeshen. You find that even things that are nikar, even things that are the pieces of fish that are clearly separate from each other, but they're put together, they're still considered a ta'arovit. So Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says the etzah would be you spread them, you throw them on a large surface. Now each one stands by itself. Now you could, now it's no ta'arovit anymore, and therefore they're far from each other. That would be mutar, right? The same would work according to Chacham Obadia as well, because there's no more ta'arovit. But if you have them all together, it will be at least the isur, the Rabbanan, according to many poskim. So therefore, you have to reckon with that in a serious way, even though that we do recognize that there are those who are mekel over here. Okay. One more piece. I mean, Chacham Obadia does say that for a shamash of Bet Knesset, he writes this in Chazon Obadia, Cherek Dalit, that the shamash of Bet Knesset could put the things back in their place. Every sefer, go through it. So, okay, this Mishnah Berurah goes here, Gemara goes there, the Ramban goes there, the Rashba goes there, the Sidurim, Chumashim, each one of them separately for themselves, because again, we mentioned that if you are the Pri Megadim that we mentioned in the very beginning of the shiur, that if you have two different types, you don't have any preference. You just want to separate them and sort them out. That safek of the Pri Megadim we have, and on top of it, now you have that maybe kelim is the Rabbanan altogether. It's sfeka dedina. We're not talking about gidule karka over here, right? So it's sfeka dedina. Then there are those who say Bichlal is not Asur, and you have the Safek Pri Megadim that I don't have any preference over here. So it says, how about you could do that, and he even applies it actually to forks and knives and similar items that you're just sorting out. You don't want any of them more than the other one. You just want them to be separated, and they're not Gidule Karka. So you have the Pri Megadim, you have the Matei Yehuda. You have all these rufim to combine. It says, okay, based on all of that, you could do it, right? Again, those who want to be more machmir, they could spread it and nullify the whole ta'arovit, and then you could take what you want. But again, still, we have the general problem that we discussed, that even if it's not gidule karka, you have a drawer of socks, and you want to go through them, and I don't want this one, I don't want this one, still considered mixture, and you have to be careful with that, even though that there are those who say that this is the Rabbanan, and there are those who say that maybe you're choosing between them right now. It's not that you're sorting them out. You want to choose a pair of socks in the morning that matches whatever you're wearing. That will be still a problem, and therefore you have to be mindful, especially if it's in the morning and it's darker, and you're getting up early. So you have to be mindful of that still in in your drawers. But nevertheless, these are some of the major kulas that we have in this sif. And then what we have another piece to discuss with the Biur Halacha at the end, which B'ezrat Hashem will continue in the days to come.
This came up yesterday. My son gave me the chalot.